The cargo vessel Starbound Horizon moved through the darkness of space like a lonely whale swimming through an endless ocean. The ship was old, but reliable, its hull scarred from years of service along the most dangerous trade routes in the galaxy. Captain Daniel Harper stood at the helm with his arms crossed over his chest, watching the navigation display with tired eyes. He had been awake for 16 hours, but sleep would have to wait. The Kellax corridor was not a place where smart captains let their guard down. This stretch of space sat between 3 different star systems, far from any military patrol routes, and even farther from any hope of rescue. Pirates loved it here. Slavers loved it even more. And the Vorath Empire had claimed this entire region as their hunting ground. Lieutenant Laura Mitchell sat at her station near the front of the bridge. She was young, barely 28 years old, but she had proven herself a dozen times over during their journey. Her fingers moved across her console with practiced ease as she monitored the sensor readings. When the first warning light blinked red, her stomach dropped. "Captain," she said, keeping her voice steady, even though her heart was racing. "We have incoming contacts. 3 vessels dropping out of hyperspace approximately 40,000 kilometers off our port side." Daniel did not move. He simply watched as the 3 red dots appeared on the main display, growing closer with each passing second. "Identification?" he asked. "Vorath cruisers," Laura replied. "Heavy class. They are moving into an intercept formation." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what Vorath cruisers meant. The Vorath were a reptilian species that had built their empire on the backs of conquered peoples. They were tall creatures, standing nearly 7 feet, with thick green scales and yellow eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. They did not negotiate. They did not trade fairly. They took what they wanted, and anyone who resisted was either killed or dragged away in chains. Communications Officer Kevin Scott turned in his seat. He was an older man with gray streaks in his dark hair, and a calm demeanor that never seemed to crack. "They are hailing us, Captain. Standard frequency." "Put it through," Daniel said. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a Vorath commander. The alien's scales were darker than most, almost black, and a long scar ran down the left side of his face. His lips pulled back to reveal rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. "Human vessel," the Vorath said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the bridge speakers. "I am Warlord Kessex of the Vorath Empire. You are trespassing in our territory. Power down your engines, and prepare to be boarded. Your cargo now belongs to the Empire. Your crew will be processed and assigned to appropriate labor stations. Resist, and you will be destroyed. This is your only warning." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge crew staring at a blank screen. Kevin looked at his captain with raised eyebrows. They did not even wait for a response. "They never do," Daniel replied quietly. He turned to look at his first officer, Commander Nicole Grant, who stood near the tactical station with her arms folded. She was a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by anything anymore. A thin smile was forming on her lips. "What do you think?" Daniel asked her. "I think they made a mistake," Nicole said. "A very big mistake." Daniel nodded slowly. He reached for the ship-wide communication panel and pressed the button. His voice echoed through every corridor and compartment of the Starbound Horizon. "All hands, this is the captain. We have 3 Vorath cruisers closing on our position. They have demanded our surrender and intend to board us. I want everyone to understand something very clearly. We are not surrendering. We are not handing over our cargo. And we are certainly not becoming slaves. Battle stations. Marine detachment. Report to defensive positions. This is not a drill." He released the button and turned back to the main display. The 3 cruisers were spreading out now, taking up positions to box in the cargo vessel from multiple angles. It was a standard predator tactic, designed to cut off any escape route and force the prey into submission. Deep in the lower decks of the Starbound Horizon, Commander Nathan Cole received the captain's message with grim satisfaction. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and thick-necked, with hands that had broken bones and a face that had taken more punches than he could count. He had served in the United Earth Navy for 22 years, fighting in conflicts that most civilians would never hear about. His Marine detachment consisted of 40 soldiers, each one hand-picked from the most elite units in the fleet. They were not ordinary security personnel. They were killers, trained in every form of combat that humanity had perfected over thousands of years of warfare. "You heard the captain," Nathan said to his assembled troops. "We have incoming guests. I want Alpha Team covering the main docking ports. Bravo Team, take the cargo bay. Charlie Team, you are with me in the engineering section. Remember your training. Let them come to us. Let them think they have won. And then we show them what happens when you try to board a human ship." The Marines dispersed with quiet efficiency, their boots making almost no sound on the metal floors as they moved to their positions. Each one carried weapons that the Vorath had never seen before, tools of death that humanity had designed specifically for close-quarters combat in the tight corridors of starships. On the bridge, Laura watched the Vorath cruisers move closer. "They are launching boarding pods," she reported. "I count approximately 300 warriors incoming." 300, Nicole repeated with a slight shake of her head. "They really think 300 is enough?" Daniel settled into his captain's chair and watched the swarm of small craft racing toward his ship. The Vorath believed they were attacking a helpless cargo vessel crewed by frightened merchants. They believed humans were weak, soft, easy prey that would cower and beg for mercy at the first sign of danger. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. "Let them dock," Daniel said calmly. "Let them board. And then let them discover why every other species in this galaxy knows better than to attack a human ship." The first boarding pod connected with the hull of the starbound Horizon, with a dull thump that echoed through the corridors. The sound of cutting tools filled the air as the Vorath began slicing through the outer airlock. Inside the ship, 40 Marines waited in the darkness with weapons raised and hearts steady. The hunt was about to begin. But the Vorath had made a fatal error in their calculations. They thought they were the hunters. They were wrong. The galaxy was old. Civilizations had risen and fallen across its spiral arms for millions of years before humanity even learned to make fire. When the first alien species discovered Earth in the late 22nd century, they looked at the small blue planet and saw nothing remarkable. Just another primitive world populated by creatures that had barely figured out how to leave their own atmosphere. The Zelthari Confederacy was the first to make official contact. They were an ancient race, tall and elegant beings with silver skin and minds that could process information faster than any computer. They had conquered 100 worlds and built an empire that spanned 3 star systems. When they arrived at Earth in the year 2187, they expected to find grateful primitives who would welcome the opportunity to serve a superior civilization. What they found instead changed everything. Humanity did not bow. Humanity did not surrender. When the Zelthari demanded that Earth submit to their rule, the United Nations sent back a single message containing 2 words that would echo through galactic history. The message simply said, "Come try." The Zelthari tried. They sent a fleet of 47 warships to pacify the rebellious planet. They expected the campaign to last a few days at most. These primitives had no interstellar vessels, no advanced weapons, nothing that could possibly challenge the might of the Confederacy. The war lasted 3 weeks. When it ended, all 47 Zelthari warships were either destroyed or captured. 200,000 Confederacy soldiers were dead. The Zelthari had lost more troops in 3 weeks than they had lost in the previous century of conquest. Humanity had lost a single orbital station and approximately 800 soldiers. The galaxy took notice after that. Scholars and military strategists from a dozen different species began studying human history, trying to understand how such a young and seemingly primitive race could have achieved such a devastating victory. What they found terrified them. Humanity had been at war with itself since the very beginning. They had fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over the color of their skin and the names of their gods. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet not once but several times over. They had faced extinction-level threats from disease, from climate change, from asteroid impacts, and they had survived every single one through sheer stubborn refusal to die. The Zelthari had made the mistake of thinking that a species still fighting among themselves must be weak. They failed to understand that those constant internal conflicts had turned humanity into the most efficient killing machines the galaxy had ever produced. Every generation of humans had been forged in the fires of war. Every advance in their technology had been driven by the need to destroy their enemies more effectively. When humanity finally reached the stars, they brought all of that terrible knowledge with them. Commander Nathan Cole knew this history well. He had studied it at the military academy on Luna, memorizing the battles and the strategies that had made humanity feared throughout the known universe. He had applied those lessons in a dozen different conflicts, fighting enemies that ranged from human separatists to alien raiders. Now he stood in the darkness of the cargo bay, listening to the sound of Vorath cutting tools slicing through the outer hull. His Marines were positioned throughout the room, hidden behind crates and support beams and maintenance panels. Their weapons were loaded, their breathing was steady, and their hearts were cold. "Remember," Nathan said quietly over the squad communication channel, "these creatures think we are prey. They have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. Let us educate them." The cutting stopped. There was a moment of silence, and then the airlock door exploded inward with a deafening crash. Vorath warriors poured through the opening, their plasma rifles raised, and their yellow eyes scanning the dimly lit cargo bay. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never encountered anything they could not kill. The first squad spread out across the bay, checking behind the nearest containers. Their leader, a massive Vorath with ceremonial scars covering his arms, gestured for his troops to advance deeper into the room. "The humans are hiding," he growled to his squad. "Find them, kill any who resist. The rest will be taken alive for the slave markets." None of his soldiers noticed the shadows moving behind them. None of them saw the hatches in the ceiling sliding silently open. None of them heard the soft footsteps approaching from every direction. Sergeant Megan Price was 24 years old. She had joined the Marines at 18, fresh out of a childhood spent on the colony world of New Boston, where survival was a daily struggle against harsh conditions and limited resources. She was small for a Marine, barely 5 feet, 4 inches tall, but what she lacked in size she made up for in speed and precision. She dropped from the ceiling vent directly onto the back of a Vorath warrior, her combat knife finding the gap between his neck scales before he even knew she was there. The alien collapsed without a sound. Megan was already moving to her next target before his body hit the ground. All around the cargo bay, similar scenes were playing out. Marines emerged from hiding spots that the Vorath had walked right past, their weapons speaking in short, controlled bursts that dropped aliens with mechanical efficiency. The Vorath tried to respond, but they were fighting an enemy they could not see, could not predict, could not understand. Private Danny Morrison took down 3 warriors with his pulse rifle before ducking behind a cargo container to reload. He was breathing hard, but his hands were steady. This was what he had trained for. This was what humans did better than any other species in the galaxy. They killed. On the bridge, Captain Daniel Harper watched the battle unfold through the internal sensor network. The Vorath boarding parties had entered the ship at 4 different points, approximately 300 warriors in total. Within the first 90 seconds of contact, almost 50 of them were already dead. "They came expecting sheep," Nicole said quietly as she watched the tactical display. "They found wolves instead." Daniel nodded slowly. The Vorath were learning a lesson that the Zelthari had learned over a century ago. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with. They had crawled up from the mud through endless millennia of violence and suffering. And that journey had turned them into something terrible and beautiful at the same time. The screams echoing through the lower decks of the starbound horizon were proof of that. The hunters had become the hunted, and there was nowhere for them to run. Warlord Kessex would soon learn why the galaxy feared the soldiers of Earth. He would learn why empires that had lasted for thousands of years gave human vessels a wide berth. He would learn what happened when predators made the mistake of attacking prey that was far more dangerous than it appeared. The lesson was being written in blood right now, one dead Vorath at a time. The corridors of the starbound horizon had become a maze of death. Emergency lighting cast everything in shades of deep red, turning the metal walls into something that looked like the inside of a living creature. The air was thick with the smell of burnt metal and the copper scent of blood, both human red and Vorath green mixing together on the floor plates. Squad leader Torvik led his remaining warriors through the ship's engineering section, his plasma rifle sweeping from side to side as he searched for targets. He had started with 30 soldiers under his command. Now he had 12, and that number was shrinking with every passing minute. The humans were ghosts. They appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before the Vorath could mount any kind of response. Torvik had fought against a dozen different species during his career as a warrior of the Empire. He had never encountered anything like this. "Stay together," he hissed at his troops. "Watch the vents. Watch the shadows. These creatures are using guerrilla tactics. If we maintain formation, we can hold them off until reinforcements arrive." But reinforcements were not coming. The boarding pods had delivered all available warriors to the human ship, and the cruisers outside were too far away to provide any meaningful support. Torvik and his soldiers were on their own, trapped in a metal tomb with enemies that seemed to know their every move before they made it. A sound came from somewhere ahead. It was soft, almost like a whisper. And it made every scale on Torvik's body stand up in alarm. He raised his fist to signal a halt, but before his soldiers could react, the lights went out completely. Total darkness swallowed the corridor. The Vorath had good night vision, but even their eyes needed some light to work with. In this absolute blackness, they were blind. "Thermal sensors," Torvik ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Switch to thermal." His soldiers fumbled with their helmet controls, trying to activate their backup visual systems. 2 of them managed to get their thermal imaging working. The rest never got the chance. Commander Nathan Cole moved through the darkness like a predator born to hunt in the void. His night vision goggles painted the world in shades of green, showing him every detail of the corridor and the Vorath soldiers stumbling around in confusion. He had turned off all the lights in this section, specifically to create this moment of vulnerability. Humans had evolved as daylight hunters, but they had learned to adapt. They had developed technology to overcome their natural limitations. Tools that let them see in darkness, and hear sounds beyond normal range, and strike from distances that should have been impossible. The Vorath thought they were the superior predators, but they had no idea what human ingenuity could accomplish. Nathan moved up behind the nearest Vorath warrior, and brought his knife across the alien's throat in a single smooth motion. The creature dropped without a sound. Nathan was already moving to the next target before the body finished falling. His Marines worked with the same silent efficiency. Private Jake Brennan took down 2 warriors with close-range pulse shots that barely made any noise thanks to the integrated suppressors. Corporal Amanda West snapped a Vorath neck with a technique she had learned during special operations training on Earth. When the lights came back on 30 seconds later, squad leader Torvik found himself alone. All 11 of his remaining soldiers lay dead around him, their bodies cooling on the metal floor. He spun in a circle, his rifle searching for targets, but there was no one there. The humans had vanished again, leaving only corpses behind. "Impossible," Torvik breathed. His hands were shaking now, something that had never happened to him in 20 years of combat. "This is impossible," a voice came from somewhere above him. "No, this is just what humans do." Torvik looked up and saw Commander Nathan Cole standing on a maintenance catwalk, his rifle aimed directly at the Vorath's head. There was no emotion in the human's eyes, just cold professional calculation. "Your empire made a mistake today," Nathan said calmly. "You attacked a ship full of people who have been perfecting the art of war since before your species learned to walk upright. We have fought monsters and tyrants and enemies that made the Vorath look like children playing with toys, and we beat them all." Torvik raised his weapon, but he knew he was too slow. He had always been too slow. The Vorath had built their reputation on overwhelming force and intimidation. But they had never learned to fight against an enemy that refused to be intimidated. The pulse round took him through the forehead, and squad leader Torvik joined his soldiers in death. On the bridge, Lieutenant Laura Mitchell reported the latest casualty figures. Marine casualties are minimal. 4 wounded, none critical. Estimated enemy casualties are now over 200. The remaining Vorath are falling back toward the boarding pods, but our teams are cutting off their retreat routes. Captain Daniel Harper nodded slowly. The battle was going exactly as planned. The starbound horizon was not what it appeared to be. On the surface, it looked like an ordinary cargo vessel, the kind of easy target that pirates and raiders loved to attack. In reality, it was what the military called a Q-ship, a disguised warship designed specifically to lure enemies into a trap. The Marines on board were not a standard security detail. They were a combat team from the 14th Special Operations Battalion, hand-picked for this mission by Fleet Command. The cargo in the hold was real, but it was bait, a valuable prize that would draw out exactly the kind of predators that the United Earth Navy wanted to eliminate. The Vorath had taken the bait, now they were paying the price. "What is the status of the enemy cruisers?" Daniel asked. Kevin Scott checked his displays. "They are holding position outside our effective weapon range. I do not think they realize what is happening inside the ship. Their communication with the boarding parties has been cut off since we activated the jamming field." "Good," Daniel said. "Let us keep it that way for a little while longer. I want to finish dealing with our guests before we address the ships outside." In the cargo bay, Sergeant Megan Price was doing exactly that. She moved through the bodies of fallen Vorath, checking each one to make sure they were dead. Her knife was red with alien blood, but her face showed no expression. This was just another day at the office for a human Marine. She found one Vorath still alive, clutching a wound in his side and staring up at her with terrified eyes. He was young, she realized, probably on his first raid. He tried to raise his weapon, but Megan kicked it away without effort. "Please," the young Vorath whispered. "Please. Mercy." Megan looked down at him for a long moment. Then she remembered all the stories she had heard about Vorath slave markets, about the millions of beings from dozens of species who had been captured and worked to death in imperial mines and factories. She remembered the reports of villages burned and children sold and families torn apart for profit. "Your people do not show mercy," she said quietly. "So neither do we." Her knife finished the job, and she moved on to the next body. Behind her, the cargo bay had become a graveyard. The hunters had learned what happened when they picked the wrong prey. The lesson was almost complete. Warlord Kessex stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Vengeance of Vorath, watching the human cargo vessel through the main viewport. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones, that ancient predator instinct that had kept his ancestors alive on the hunting plains of the homeworld. His boarding parties had been inside the human ship for almost 20 minutes now, and he had received no communication from them since the first few minutes of the operation. The jamming field the humans had activated was preventing any direct contact, but that should not have mattered. His warriors should have overwhelmed the weak human crew by now. They should be dragging prisoners to the boarding pods and loading cargo containers for transport. Instead, there was only silence. "Try the secondary frequencies again," Kessex ordered his communications officer. "I want contact with squad leader Torvik immediately." "I am trying, Warlord. There is no response on any frequency. The jamming is too strong." Kessex hissed in frustration. He had conducted hundreds of raids during his career, taken dozens of ships from species across this sector of space. This operation should have been simple: a lone cargo vessel, no escort, no weapons, no hope of rescue, easy prey. But nothing about this was feeling easy anymore. "Warlord," his sensor operator called out, "I am detecting unusual energy readings from the human vessel. Their reactor output is increasing significantly." "What do you mean, increasing? They are a cargo ship. They should not have the power reserves to increase anything." "I do not understand it either, Warlord. But their energy signature is now matching that of a light cruiser. It is still climbing." 1. Kessex felt the first real tendrils of fear wrapping around his hearts. He had dismissed the humans as primitives, easy targets that would surrender at the first show of force. Now he was beginning to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. On the bridge of the starbound horizon, Captain Daniel Harper watched his crew prepare for the next phase of the operation. The Marines had reported that the last of the Vorath boarders had been eliminated. 287 enemy warriors had entered the ship expecting to find frightened civilians. None of them would be leaving alive. "Commander Cole reports all clear," Nicole said. "He is bringing the surviving prisoners to the brig." Apparently, a few of them surrendered at the end. They want to be returned to their empire as witnesses. Daniel nodded. Good. Witnesses are useful. They can tell their friends what happened here. He turned to face the main view screen, where the 3 Vorath cruisers hung in space like sleeping predators. They had no idea what was about to happen. They thought their warriors were still fighting inside the human ship. They thought this was still a simple raid gone slightly wrong. They were about to discover the truth. Kevin, open a channel to the Vorath flagship. Visual communication. Standard frequency. Kevin worked his console for a moment, then nodded. Channel open, Captain. The view screen flickered, and suddenly Daniel was face to face with Warlord Kesix. The alien's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the human captain, searching for any sign of fear or weakness. He found none. Human, Kesix growled. What have you done with my warriors? Why are they not responding to communications? Daniel leaned back in his chair and allowed himself a small smile. Your warriors are dead, Warlord. All 287 of them. They boarded my ship expecting to find easy prey. They found something very different. Kesix's scales darkened with anger. You are lying. No cargo vessel could defeat 300 Vorath warriors. You must have hidden reinforcements somewhere. Not reinforcements, Daniel replied calmly. Just 40 Marines. 40 humans against your 300. The fight was over in less than 20 minutes. Your soldiers died screaming. Warlord, they died confused and terrified, unable to understand what was happening to them. Just like all the other species who made the mistake of thinking humans were weak, the Vorath commander's eyes went wide with disbelief. Impossible. You are bluffing. This is some kind of trick. Daniel shook his head slowly. No trick. Just a lesson that your empire apparently needs to learn. You see, this is not actually a cargo ship. The United Earth Navy calls it a Q-ship. It is a warship disguised to look like prey, specifically designed to lure in predators like yourself. Your boarding parties took the bait, and now your fleet is going to pay the price. He nodded to Lieutenant Ethan Price, who was manning the weapons station. Show them. Along the entire length of the starbound horizon, hidden panels began sliding open. The fake cargo containers on the outer hull fell away, revealing row after row of military-grade weapons, railgun batteries, plasma cannons, missile launchers, point defense systems. The harmless cargo vessel transformed before the eyes of the Vorath into something that looked like it had been born in the heart of a war. On the vengeance of Vorath, sensors screamed warnings as they registered the weapons powering up. Kesix stared at the view screen in horror, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. That is not possible, he whispered. No ship that size can carry that much firepower. Human engineering, Daniel said simply. We learned a long time ago that the best weapon is one your enemy does not see coming. You thought you were the hunters today, Warlord. You were wrong. You were always the prey. We just let you get close enough to spring the trap. Kesix found his voice again, though it was shaking now. Even with those weapons, you are still one ship against 3 cruisers. We will destroy you. Daniel shook his head. No, you will not. Your ships are designed for intimidation, not for real combat. They are slow, poorly armored in critical areas, and crewed by warriors who have never faced a determined enemy. My ship was built by people who have been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Every system, every weapon, every tactic was designed by the most violent species in the galaxy. You have no idea what you are facing. He leaned forward, and his eyes were cold now, cold as the void between stars. You have one chance, Warlord. Take your ships and leave this sector. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them that humanity is not prey. Tell them that the next Vorath vessel to attack a human ship will be destroyed without warning. Do this, and you might survive the next 10 minutes. Kesix stared at the human for a long moment. Pride warred with fear in his ancient warrior heart. He had never retreated from a battle in his life. He had never shown weakness to an enemy. But looking at the weapons bristling from the human vessel, looking at the cold certainty in Captain Harper's eyes, he realized that this was not a battle he could win. "You are making a powerful enemy today, human," he growled. Daniel smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We have been making enemies since before your species evolved, Warlord. We are still here. Most of them are not. Think carefully about what that means." The communication channel closed, leaving Kesix alone with his fear and his shame. Around him, his officers waited for orders, their eyes filled with uncertainty. For the first time in his long career, Warlord Kesix did not know what to do. The silence on the Vorath flagship stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Warlord Kesix stood frozen at his command station, his mind racing through options that all led to the same terrible conclusion. The human captain had given him a choice, but it was not really a choice at all. It was a mercy, and that made it even worse. Pride won out over wisdom. "All ships," Kesix growled into his communicator, "target the human vessel. Full weapons spread. We will show these primitives what happens when they challenge the Vorath Empire." His officers exchanged nervous glances but carried out his orders. The 3 cruisers began moving into attack formation, their weapon systems charging with deadly energy. Kesix watched the human ship on his view screen, waiting for some sign of fear or panic. There was none. The human captain simply nodded, as if he had expected this response all along. On the bridge of the starbound horizon, Daniel Harper let out a small sigh. "I gave them a chance. They did not take it. Most predators do not know when to retreat," Nicole observed. "It is not in their nature. Then we will have to teach them." Daniel turned to face his weapons officer. "Katie, you have firing solutions?" Lieutenant Katie Barnes was a small woman with red hair and freckles that made her look younger than her 32 years. She was also one of the best tactical officers in the entire Earth fleet, capable of calculating firing patterns in her head faster than most computers. Her fingers danced across her console with practiced ease. "Solutions locked, Captain. I recommend we disable their engines first, then take out their weapons arrays. We can leave their life support intact if you want survivors." "I want survivors," Daniel confirmed. "Someone needs to go home and tell the story." "Understood. Firing sequence prepared, ready on your command." The Vorath cruisers were closing now, their weapons glowing with barely contained energy. They moved in a triangle formation, trying to catch the human ship in overlapping fields of fire. It was a decent tactic against civilian vessels that could not shoot back. Against a United Earth Navy Q ship, it was suicide. "Fire," Daniel said quietly. The starbound horizon erupted. Railgun rounds accelerated to a fraction of light speed crossed the distance between the ships in less than a heartbeat, slamming into the lead cruiser's engine section with devastating force. Plasma beams carved through armor plating, like hot knives through butter. Missiles streaked toward their targets, each one carrying enough explosive power to gut a battleship. The first cruiser, the one on the right of the formation, took 4 railgun rounds to its main reactor. The shots punched through the outer hull, through the inner hull, and into the engineering section where they detonated with catastrophic results. The ship broke apart in a brilliant explosion that briefly outshone the nearby stars. The second cruiser tried to return fire, but Katie had already calculated its likely response. Before the Vorath weapons could complete their charging cycle, a concentrated plasma beam sliced through the ship's weapons array, melting guns and missile tubes into useless slag. A follow-up barrage of kinetic rounds shattered its engines, leaving the vessel drifting helplessly in space. The third cruiser, Warlord Kesix's flagship, attempted to flee. Its captain ordered full power to the engines, trying to break away from the human vessel and escape into hyperspace. But the starbound horizon was faster than it looked, and Katie Barnes did not miss. The flagship's engines died under a sustained railgun assault. The ship lurched to a stop, its crew thrown against bulkheads and consoles by the sudden deceleration. Emergency lights flickered throughout the vessel as damage control teams scrambled to contain the destruction. The entire battle had lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. On the bridge of the crippled vengeance of Vorath, Warlord Kesix pulled himself up from the floor where he had fallen. Green blood ran from a cut on his forehead, and several of his ribs felt broken. Around him, His bridge crew groaned and cried out in pain and shock. The view screen was still working, showing the human ship sitting motionless a few thousand kilometers away. Its weapons were still trained on his vessel, but they had stopped firing. The humans were waiting. "Damage report," Kessex croaked. "Engines destroyed, Warlord. Weapons offline. Hull integrity at 40%. Life support is stable, but we have fires on multiple decks." His first officer's voice was shaking. "The second cruiser is reporting similar damage. The third cruiser is gone, completely destroyed, gone. Nearly 800 warriors, gone in the blink of an eye." Kessex had served the Empire for 50 years, had seen countless battles, had witnessed the destruction of enemy fleets and the conquest of helpless worlds. He had never seen anything like this. The communication panel crackled to life. "Vorath vessels, this is Captain Daniel Harper of the United Earth Navy. Your attack has failed. Your fleet has been neutralized. You will stand down and await further instructions." Kessex found his voice. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to listen carefully, Warlord, because I will only say this once." The human's voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was steel beneath the softness. "You will return to Vorath space. You will tell your leaders exactly what happened here today. You will make them understand that humanity is not prey. We are not victims waiting to be conquered. We are the most dangerous species in this galaxy, and any attempt to enslave or destroy us will be met with total annihilation." Kessex swallowed hard. "And if we do this? If we carry your message? Then you get to live. I am sending coordinates to your navigation computer. There is a habitable moon in a nearby system where you can make repairs and wait for rescue. I suggest you use the time to reflect on the choices that brought you here." The communication ended. Kessex stood in the ruins of his bridge, surrounded by the moans of wounded warriors and the smell of burning circuitry. He had set out this morning expecting an easy victory. He would return home with nothing but shame and a warning. But at least he would return home. That was more than could be said for the 800 warriors aboard the destroyed cruiser, or the 287 soldiers who had boarded the human ship expecting easy prey. Commander Nathan Cole watched from the observation deck as the two surviving Vorath cruisers limped away into the darkness. The Marines had gathered the bodies of the fallen enemy warriors and stored them in the cargo bay, ready to be returned to their people as a gesture of respect. "Think they will actually deliver the message?" Megan Price asked from beside him. Nathan nodded slowly. "They will. Kessex is a warrior, and warriors understand strength. He knows now that we are not to be trifled with. He will make sure his leaders know it too. And if they do not listen? If they send another fleet?" Nathan turned to look at the young sergeant. His face was tired, but his eyes were steady. "Then we will teach them the lesson again. And again. As many times as it takes. That is what humans do, Sergeant. We survive. We adapt. We fight. And we never, ever give up." On the bridge, Captain Daniel Harper recorded a message that would be transmitted to Earth Command. He documented the battle, the casualties, and the outcome. He recommended that more Q-ships be deployed along the Kellax corridor to deter future raids. But most importantly, he made sure to include the final words he had spoken to Warlord Kessex, words that would spread through Vorath space and beyond, reaching every species that had ever considered humanity an easy target. "We do not surrender. We do not negotiate under threat. And we do not forgive attacks on our people." The stars stretched out before the starbound horizon as it resumed its course through the cosmos. Behind it, the debris of one cruiser and the limping hulks of two others marked the site of a battle that would be remembered for generations. Humanity had sent a message that day, written in fire and blood, carried by survivors too broken to deny its truth. The galaxy would not soon forget, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, other predators were already hearing the whispers. Hearing the stories of what happened when you attacked a human ship expecting surrender, the stories of what followed, total obliteration,